Let's get into it. Soul Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. Do you think that Donald Trump, President Trump, is right about what he said to Joe Rogan? We're going to get into that in a second, but you remember this infamous moment where Trump had seen Joe Rogan and he said, "Oh man, there's that guy. There he is." And he ran up to him, went in for a hug. And then he said some things to Joe Rogan that nobody knew. Nobody knew what he said. But of course, Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo were very close. So Joe Rogan has no problem telling Eddie and the whole world in this clip that I'm going to show you what it is that Trump said. But in this podcast, we're going to be talking a little bit about what Trump said, if he's actually correct, and the influence that Joe Rogan seems to have, and also the podcast that has overtaken Joe Rogan's podcast. Do you guys know what that podcast is? Me neither. Never heard of it. It's called Midas Touch, though. We'll talk about that a little bit. But let's start with the Joe Rogan clip, and then we'll get into the rest. Let's go.
GSP, all that
it's
shit.
such a great gym. I mean, you can't go wrong with those guys.
best, yeah.
And Greg is just such a great mind for
And
strategy.
a good guy, yeah. And not a slimy guy.
And
They put together
Winklejohn,
programs.
Winklejohn was a
The best.
legit kickboxer in
What'd you
his
say?
day. Winklejohn was
Yeah.
a legit kick. He fought Jean-Yves Theriault.
Oh yeah, Winklejohn's the
He
man.
was legit, man. Winklejohn's a legit striker. And then you got all those other people over there too. It's like such a killer lineup. But
I was there during John's heyday, man.
Yeah, you were.
Savage.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I think his heyday's still going on, man.
You
Especially at heavyweight.
We just don't know. He's not
Right.
active enough.
Yeah. It's really there's one fight, man. There's one fight.
And then after that, it's
After
like,
that,
all right.
they gotta scour.
Because here's the thing, even if John mollywops Tom, which I think that John would be an underdog in the fight, but let's say John beats Tom.
Isn't that crazy?
And then retires. It's like, all right, Tom Aspinall's still going to dominate.
Right.
Who's going to beat him?
You get Francis to come back.
Good.
The Saudis. Come along. Come on. The Saudis come along with that.
Francis is going to fight
Open up
Wilder.
that big bag.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So
That got to do it.
good John Jones story that nobody knows, because I was cornering him for that fight, his last fight against Stipe, and we found out that Trump was going to be there, and for probably a solid 15 to 20 minutes, while he was warming up, like 15 to 20 minutes, he's getting ready to go out to fight for the belt. Probably 20 minutes of that warm up was him just practicing the mechanics on how to do the Trump dance right. We looked it up. We YouTubed it, and he was practicing the Trump dance in the locker room, getting ready to
Savage.
do it.
How confident are you of victory? Well, you're already practicing your victory dance.
Pretty confident. Pretty
And
confident.
the best
in
is
that
we were all for it. We're like, no, the hands got to be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. So we were coaching him through it as he was doing it.
Oh, I was laughing
That's good.
so
How did
hard.
that fight end? I forget.
Spinning back kick to the body.
Yeah, I never told you this, but I was actually there.
You were there?
I flew in with the guys from CPI. You know,
Why didn't you tell me we were there?
Because you're so busy, you know what I mean. And then I was with
group?
a big group. And what am I gonna do?
Right.
I'm like, you know what?
Got it.
You had so much shit going on. And so Ed Clay from CPI calls me up. He goes, "Hey, you want to go? You want me to pick you up in my private jet and go to see Tyson fight in Dallas, and then we fly and go see John Jones fight?"
No,
the
that
next night?"
sounds terrible. No, I hate fun.
I need better friends.
I actually said no.
Did you really?
My
kid had baseball?
My kid had baseball
Yep.
all weekend.
Baseball.
I get it.
So I said, "Damn," because he asked me. This was on. We were going to leave on Thursday or Friday morning or Thursday, and it was like Tuesday. And I'm like, "Yo, what? No one's ever asked. I've never had that offer ever. Let me go pick you up in the private. Pick me up in Van Nuys Airport, and then we go to Dallas, and then we go to New York, and I said, "Dude, I can't. And then I told my wife, and my wife goes, "Are you retarded?
That's a good wife.
You call this back? You fucking going?" And I go, "Okay."
The kids
I
also
called
play
back.
like
I said, "My
100
wife's
games.
making me go."
They play a lot of games.
Yeah, especially his son, Travel Ball. It's so many games.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, dude, I've been to a million UFCs. I'd rather watch it at home or with my buddies, because we have UFC parties at the gym, and That's funner to me than to see it
This-
live, to tell you the truth.
This is
All
my
day.
favorite way to watch
But-
fights.
but-
This is my favorite way.
By far.
But when we were there, dude, I was just watching the whole Trump thing go on. You see RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. Was
Yeah.
Elon there too?
I believe it was.
Yeah, he was
Dude,
there. Yeah, he
dude.
was at that one.
And I was just sitting there going, fuck, you're there. And I
FBI
see Trump.
director.
I'm like, dude, this is a good time for the deep state to send a missile to Madison Square Garden. It would
that
solve
he's
all
thinking
their
that.
problems.
There was like
Dude.
it was like 47 checkpoints. It was
was
like
crazy.
it was like
As there
Secret
should be.
Service,
As
And
there
then,
cops
should be.
and then I
everywhere.
see Trump come up. I saw the whole thing. Trump walking straight to you and gave you a big hug, and he's whispering sweet nothings in your ear. I'm like, holy! They're like this shit right here. Like I was like, what the? He goes right to you, man. Look at that. He didn't want to talk to John Anik. He was right to you.
He knew you were ready for the handshake pull, so he
Yeah.
was like, you know,
nah,
I'm
he,
just gonna
went,
go in
he
for a
just
hug.
came to give me a hug that time.
Dude, look at that. And what did he say?
He gave DC the left hand.
I basically
don't have to
said,
say it. You don't have to
he
say it. You
basically
don't have to
said
say
I
it.
won him the election.
Damn. How crazy is this? Right?
Very interesting times.
And then John Jones wins and then does the dance.
That was crazy.
Dude, that day.
We're so
That
back.
day was insane.
We're so
Yeah,
back.
that was a
That
great
day was
day.
insane.
It was a great day.
For the world. That's like world history shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
They
was.
could put that whole event in some book.
But all the other athletes started doing the Trump dance after that.
Yeah,
Everyone
a
was
lot
like-
of football
everyone was
players
like,
were already doing
A
it.
lot of
Look
football
at
players.
John. That's amazing.
That's the coolest shit
That's
ever, man.
amazing.
John Jones, savage.
The GOAT.
The goat.
Yeah.
No,
The GOAT now.
No, no
argument.
doubt. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's no doubt.
It's silly when people argue that.
If he beats Aspinall,
Yeah.
everybody has to
Come
shut the
on.
fuck up forever.
They need to shut the f- up even if he were to lose to Aspinall.
Yeah.
Look, his resume through light heavyweight.
incredible.
You got to realize he went through that whole f***ing span of fighting the best of the best that light heavyweights ever had to offer.
Look at
and
the
f***ed up
look at the
all of them.
line. It's like Tom Aspinall's a slight favorite. That's
Yeah,
kind of
as
crazy.
he should be.
Look
I
at
don't think he
Marab
should
over
be.
Sean.
So he pretty much won him the election. That is a crazy thing to hear from a sitting president of the United States, especially one as amazing, controversial, polarizing, fighting through everything as Trump. Especially somebody who clearly he went on his own journey, his own battle. I mean, he went through hell to win that election. And for him to actually have, I don't even know what to call it. It's a little bit of, I don't know. It's very nice because you know everything he's been through. And then for him to turn to Joe and say, you won me the election. Like, what? Like, no, you got shot and you went through court cases. No. Like that, you did it all. That was crazy. You did 1,000 interviews. Like, that's all you. You got RFK on your team. Tulsi Gabbard, that you handled business there. But for him to, I guess, humble is the word. For him to be humble enough to say that to Joe. But also, Trump does have a lot of people around him. So he's probably not saying that just out of nowhere. He's probably saying like, no, I saw the numbers and, there was a big spike after I was on your show and everybody wanted it and it was downloaded this many times and it played on X 250 million times. So, no, you did that. It's very interesting, man. Very, very interesting. And just quick shout out to Eddie Bravo being an incredible dad. Hey, you want to come on a private jet, see one historic fight, see another historic fight. President Trump's going to be in the building. It's going to be amazing. You want to come? Nah, my kids got baseball all weekend. Man, that's something I would do. 100%. 100%. That is exactly something that I would do. Hopefully, when I am a dad with a kid that age, I'm doing things like that because that's a solid thing to do. Very solid. Solid Eddie Bravo right there. Says he watches the show. If you see that, you're an amazing dad, Eddie. Absolutely incredible. But Joe Rogan, man, the question becomes, how powerful is he? And again, back to my first question, do you think Trump is correct in saying this to Joe Rogan? Right? I think he is correct in saying that. Joe Rogan, his audience, what he brings in is 28 times bigger than CNN. It's 5 times bigger than MSNBC, and it rivals the top 3 shows on ABC, which I was kind of shocked by. I thought he would just dominate ABC as well. But his audience alone, the top 3 shows on ABC, they rival each other. They go back and forth with how many people are actually watching week to week. I did some week to week analysis on this whole thing. It's pretty incredible. You know, when you're that size and you have that type of power, it makes sense that a president is going to turn to you and say, you won me this election. Too bad, I guess, too bad or great for us that he could not do the same thing for Bernie Sanders. Glad he wasn't that powerful back then, because America would be Canada by now under Bernie Sanders, quite honestly. But Joe Rogan got dethroned by these 2 guys. I'm sure you haven't even seen these guys before. They have a podcast called the Midas Touch Podcast. Everybody made such a big deal about this because they're looking for Joe Rogan to not be seen as super powerful, right? So they did all these articles. They're talking about, it's a very anti-Trump podcast, you know, so people are talking about it all day, about how Joe Rogan has been dethroned by these people. But the thing about it is, see, the biggest podcast has been dethroned, Joe Rogan Experience. The thing about it is, this has happened before. This happened between Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, actually. Many people don't even really realize it. You know, Tucker Carlson overtook Joe Rogan's podcast back in July 2024. He was actually doing better. He was the number 1 on Spotify. You know, even Sean Ryan's podcast overtook Joe Rogan's podcast. But there is no one who is sitting back saying, well, you know, I've seen a lot about this candidate, but I'll wait until I see him on the Sean Ryan podcast. Although Sean Ryan's amazing, people aren't quite talking like that yet. He had JD Vance. I think he might even interview Trump. I'm not 100% sure. But even when those podcasts were happening, we were still all chanting for Donald Trump to be on Joe Rogan's podcast. Same thing with Tucker Carlson. He may have, I don't even know if he interviewed JD Vance. I know he interviewed Trump, but that was early on, and that was a bit of a FU to Fox, because Fox was hosting a debate. Donald Trump said, I'm not going to be a part of it, and instead I'm going to sit down with Tucker Carlson, you know? But even still, people were like, we want Donald Trump on Joe Rogan. I remember, you guys know, I was one of the loudest chanters of that. We were all in the comment sections saying, when is the Trump podcast coming out? People were getting pissed. People were getting really, really mad. So when it comes to this whole Midas Touch podcast, and these 2 guys, 3 guys actually, it's 3 brothers, Ben, Brett, and Jordy. These 3 guys. So you tell me that Joe Rogan's been dethroned. Do you think that takes away any of Joe Rogan's relevance today? Do you think it takes away any of his power? I don't really think so. You know, Joe Rogan didn't become powerful by being this pretty much quote unquote independent. This is their YouTube channel, independent version of MSNBC, because that's all these guys are. They sat down with Biden.
I wanted to get results immediately, so I started to work on the things I thought were most consequential. How can we lead the world without having the best infrastructure in the world, the best ports, airports, etc.?
So they're just willing to do the scripted interviews. They're all buttoned up. They're in their suit. They stick to politics. And there's a crowd for that, especially right now with people railing against Trump. Those people want a place to go, and they have a place to go now, and it's the Midas Touch. But all these guys do is exactly what MSNBC does, except they don't do it in any fancy backgrounds. They just do it in what looks like their office. It's probably a set of sorts, but it's basically the same thing as MSNBC.
Yourself any favors here, Fox. State regime media known as Fox is flailing as they try to cover up the Trump regime's leak of highly classified, the most classified type of information, war plans on.
That's it. You know, you're calling Fox state media, you know. Really interesting, because state media doesn't go from administration to administration. So were they state media when Biden was in office? How about Obama? Huh? It's just, again, they're just doing the MSNBC thing, and they're just doing it in a smaller scale. So when you tell me that Joe Rogan's been taken over or overtaken by these guys, I'm just not really seeing it. Joe Rogan's influence is massive right now. And in fact, as much as I have tried to fight it, as much as Joe Rogan doesn't see it that way, and I've heard you guys in the comment section say it over and over again, Joe Rogan has become a gatekeeper of cultural credibility. He really has. Right? When it comes to this guy, he looks so silly on the screen right now. But he's happy doing what he's doing. That's good. But when it comes to Joe Rogan, you know, people have to go through him in order to seem authentic. You know, this guy will interview Joe Biden. Sure, 100%. He'll interview Joe Biden. But you're not going to see this guy sit down with J.D. Vance. And you're certainly not going to see him sit down with Trump. And he's not going to be cordial to both of those people, even if he does sit down with them. You know, he's already calling Fox state media. But when it came to Joe Rogan, the second that he was even about to have Trump on, everybody was like, well, do Kamala Harris too. And he agreed. He said, yeah, Kamala Harris too. And before Kamala Harris, he said, yeah, Biden. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Let's do it. Let's do it however you'd like to do it. Just make sure it's in the studio here. There's very few people today that have both sides saying, I want to see my candidate on your show so I get a better read on them. You don't get a read on Biden via this interview. You just get talking points. That's it. You don't get a read on Kamala Harris if she's doing this type of it. You're not going to get a read on AOC if she ends up doing this show, if she actually runs for president. People go to Joe Rogan because he has become insanely authentic, and he's done that through, and it's not for everybody, but being, you know, very drunk, very high on his show, shooting, just talking a bunch of smack with his friends, open conversations. That evolved into doctors. That evolved into, you know, Graham Hancock. People have watched this very authentic person have these conversations week after week, day after day, and they started realizing, okay, this is the guy I want to hear have a conversation. You know, Theo Vaughn interviewed Trump, and we were like, that's not enough. Aiden Ross, who's a streamer, one of the biggest streamers, he did an interview with Donald Trump, and we said that's not enough. Right? Sean Ryan, I think, I'm not sure if he did Trump, but even after Sean Ryan, after time and time again, all the interviews that Trump was doing, everybody said that is not enough. We want to see the 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. We want to understand. So he's become a gatekeeper in that sense. He really has. And it's not just, you know, I'm sure it can span over to comedy as well. I'm sure it can span into other things, but it's because he's become quite a political gatekeeper in regards to credibility. Now, I don't know if he's going to do this in 2028. I don't know if he's going to keep on doing this type of thing. Maybe it was just really important this time around because it was a very, very consequential election. But we'll see. But another question becomes, was this an accident? You know, I bring up him getting smashed so much so, Shane Gillis actually had a story that they were doing a Protect Our Parks episode, and Joe got so drunk that they couldn't film it. And he was so smashed that he still thought they were recording, and he kept telling everybody to talk into the mics and to wear their headphones. So you ask yourself, was this by accident? Joe Rogan says it was by accident. I think it wasn't by accident. Now, I'm not going to go tinfoil and say that this is by design, by some deep state figure, but I think there was intentionality in doing this stuff every day and having these authentic conversations every day and opening up to your friends and putting people on like David Goggins and Jordan Peterson. I think there is a method to what he does, and it's gotten to a point that I don't think he ever saw coming, right? But when it comes to guys like these Midas touch people, they're not getting there. And I'm a little biased. I mean, look, I love Joe Rogan. I'm a little biased, but I don't think they're getting to that point. I don't think we're ever going to see them get to that point. Because also, when you think about it, they're talking about 3 different guys who do this podcast. So it takes 3 people to even dethrone Joe Rogan. They're each doing their own show. they put it all on Spotify, and that's equivalent to one podcast, you know? Again, it's pretty much the same thing as ABC. If you took those 3 biggest shows that ABC had and compared it to Joe Rogan, they would all fall short, right? Joe Rogan appeals to independents. He appeals to skeptics, tinfoil wearing people like myself, and to disillusioned voters. And I don't think that there's anyone currently who has that type of reach right now, to where you're feeling like an intellectual and you're listening to him, to where you're a guy who just needs a friend and just wants to hear a bunch of people talk, like I really am when it comes to podcasting, and why I love listening to podcasts so much, because I like hearing people talk. It makes me, I like it, right? Whoever you are listening to it, you know, there's just all walks of life. Hunters, there's white, there's black, there's intellectual, there's Democrat, there's Republican, there's old school lefties, and there's new school conservatives, who are pretty much like the old school lefties when you really think about it. There's not anybody who has that type of, it's so funny, I'm keeping them on the screen. There's nobody right now that has that type of reach. So again, going back to the question, do you think that Trump is right about what he said to Joe Rogan? Do you think that Joe Rogan is actually the one that won Trump this election? Or do you think Trump's just being a nice guy? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Never thought I would be hearing what they actually whisper to each other. I thought it would just be one of those, you know, Illuminati things that we never get let in on. But Eddie Bravo, shout out to Eddie Bravo. Thanks for getting Joe to admit all of that to us. Thank you so much. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. Helps the channel tremendously. Watch me on Twitch, and I'm out.